I am a 43 years old female, have been with my partner, he's 50, for 6 years now. We have been living together for 5 of them. We are not married and we do not plan to marry in the future. I have a son, he's 19, that is currently a high school senior. My partner has a daughter, she's 21, who is going to college. When I met my partner, I was a widow of 3 years. I am lucky enough to have a very lucrative business and some family money. Also, my late husband left a substantial estate, including the house we live in. The house is a family home, so it passed to my son as the only heir. My partner also makes good money and the difference in our lifestyles was pretty much negligible. But while I and my late husband made sure to not spoil our son, he was responsible for keeping his room clean. Even though we have a housekeeper, he had chores during the weekends. We taught him how to cook, his allowance is reasonable, he has to save for expensive purchases like a car, a PS5, etc. My current partner and his ex-wife spoil their daughter rotten. Due to an incident when we first moved in together, she demanded my son's bedroom since it was the second biggest. Got rejected since it was his home and she only spends the weekend. And after some family therapy, we agreed that she will be treated like a guest by me. She will have to follow the house rules and that at the extent of our relationship. Now while she is spoiled, she is a good girl, academically excellent. Except for the aforementioned incident, very respectful and just a pleasant young woman. The problem is that I did not know the extent to which my partner spent money on her. He pays some money as rent that I put into my son's college fund and we split the common bills in half. Everything else is our own responsibility, so we don't know much about each other's finances. Now my son is planning to do a tour of East Asia during the summer and I was happy to give him the money to do so, as a gift for getting into a very prestigious college. When my stepdaughter heard about it, she asked her dad to pay for a tour of Europe, since he didn't send her on one after she got into college. He agreed because he never says no. But he came to me asking me to lend him close to $30,000 because he can't afford the trip on his own. I am not even giving that much to my son and his plane tickets are more expensive. I refused. I said that since this wasn't an emergency, he can save and send her on the trip after she graduates college. Now he is not talking to me, saying that I am choosing favorites. I have no relationship with his daughter, so I don't know how that even is applicable. And that I am putting money over his happiness and relationship with his daughter. I can easily afford to lend him the full amount, I just don't want to, because his reasons are not convincing enough. Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now, we got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage, and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating, and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this. So I am 22 years old. I don't have much knowledge about finances and stuff as I still live at home as I'm at university. I do, however, pay my parents about £300 a month rent. I pay my own phone plan, buy material stuff I want or need, pay out for other services like for music or whatever, and try to put as much as I can in savings whilst still keeping enough in my main account for day-to-day purchases. Currently, I am saving up for driving lessons and hope that if I pass decently, I can use some of my savings towards getting a car. I'm in my final year of uni, so I'll be done and able to work full-time when all this happens. I also decided to get a credit card so I can learn how to manage credit wisely and build some up. My credit score is good for someone of my age and circumstance, but obviously it's nothing great in comparison for other stuff. I should point out that at most I only plan on using this card with a total adding up to £100. I've stuck to that so far and only actually used it twice, with these purchases only adding up to £80, and I paid it off quickly. I do not plan on exceeding my limit anytime soon, as I've heard far too many horror stories of people just using their credit card too much cause it was handy and getting into debt. The only people I disclosed this to was my dad, as my mom has the tendency to blab to my brother and sister-in-law, both 28. She happened to overhear us talking one day, and before I knew it, my brother and sister-in-law got wind and asked me if they could use it. They both admitted they had debt spurred on by excessive credit card use and thought that since I basically had nothing owed on mine, it was free money. I told them quite politely that I was really uncomfortable with that idea and that I would owe the money, and I can't magic up that kind of money. Things went quiet until a few days later they both turned up at the house. They were nice to start with, but basically started demanding I let them use the card, and they tried to manipulate my mother into guilting me into doing it. I got really angry, and when my brother said I owe it to them because they used to babysit me up until a couple of years ago, I laughed in their faces and walked out. When I came home, I learned they tried to manipulate my dad and he kicked them both out. My mother then tried and he told her to go too, and she is currently staying with my brother and Sil. The only person on my side is my dad, who tells me they're all trying to take me for a ride and they're trying to manipulate me cause I'm young and they think I'm vulnerable. My brother, sister-in-law and mom on the other hand think it isn't a big deal letting someone else use my card. It's really messing with my head, and I just want everyone to stop being in an argument. My husband had a serious injury weeks ago. He's bedridden and his family come to see him every day. Mother-in-law keeps drilling what I need to do to make my husband comfortable, but does nothing to help. Just visits every day and sits around expecting to be fed and entertained. Sometimes Bil, his wife and kids join them and turn the house into a mess. Yesterday Mil, her husband and son came again. They checked on my husband, then went to sit in the living room for hours. I served them coffee and croissant. Hours later my husband threw up again, second time. I had to take care of changing his clothes and cleaning the sheets to avoid infections. I was exhausted. I came downstairs and mother-in-law looked at me and asked, "Hey, where's our dinner?" I was shocked that after seeing me go up and downstairs many times and cleaning and bringing new sheets and running the washing machine that she'd expect me to prepare dinner. I'd already eaten a sandwich at 6 and yogurt. I have problems with my stomach and stress, and pregnancy made it worse. I'm 4 months in. I pointed at the kitchen and told her to help herself out. She gave me a look, then said she didn't expect me to ask her to cook dinner at my house. I said I didn't expect her to ask me to cook dinner while I'm taking care of her son. She started arguing about the way I spoke about my husband, saying as his partner, "This is the least I could do," and called me unhinged for throwing in her face that I'm helping my husband. She got her husband involved, asking what his thoughts were on me making guests go hungry and forcing them to cook themselves, when this supposed to be my duty as a host homeowner. Father-in-law said they could order food and call it a day, and yelled at my younger brother-in-law to stop playing on his phone and order food, but mother-in-law got mad and lashed out, criticizing me, saying I wasn't up to the challenge of taking care of my home and my guests like an adult. I lost it on her and told them to leave since she kept yelling, disrupting my husband's sleep. She left after saying she felt sorry for her son and grandbaby with an aggressive wife and a mother like me. She told everyone, and my older brother-in-law said he understood I'd a lot on my plate, but lectured me about how I should have respect for his mom, who was a guest, repeatedly saying if that was his wife she wouldn't have acted this way, and that I shouldn't use taking care of my husband against them. He asked me to apologize, but I didn't.